Well, we're back in the studio, and Steve Guback, what I first remember Steve was when he was walking his dog in front of my apartment there on the ground floor. Steve lives on this floor just above me, and so that was my first memory of Steve. That was about 6 years ago. And then I saw Steve on Channel 6 here doing his sports show and his travel log. And so I think you'll find that Steve Guback is a fairly interesting person, and I hope you do. He's resided at Green Spring for more than 6 years. He's the host of, or the founder of 4 programs at Green Spring on Channel 6, Talking Sports, Channel 6 Sports, The Armchair Traveler, and Football 101. Football 101 is not a Channel 6 program, but it's another program that Steve has founded. He made his living as a sports writer for many different sports, and he continues to share his knowledge of sports by giving presentations to other senior centers and groups around Northern Virginia. He's been awarded many honors, and he has set up 4 scholarships for young people interested in journalism. Today, perhaps we can learn some of the details about Steve and hear some of his stories. And so, Steve, let's go back to you born in Wallington, New Jersey,
Yep.
but you moved up to Norwalk.
Yeah, Norwalk, Connecticut.
Norwalk.
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 Yeah.
Okay.
Bedroom community of New York City.
Yeah.
We're about 43 miles from Times Square. And I spent all my high school years there.
Anything special about high school that you remember?
Well, it got me started in sports.
You were a big football star then.
Well, I wasn't a star by any means, but I wanted to play football, and I broke my arm before the season began. And so that put me out for the entire year. And the local newspaper at Norwalk wanted somebody to be covering high school activities. And I had good grades and had worked on the student newspaper, and the football coach recommended me.
Oh.
So I went to work with the Norwalk Hour, the daily paper in the city, and got paid a nickel an inch for everything that was printed.
A nickel an inch.
Yeah. And at Saturday mornings, I'd have to get the clippings of all the stories I had written, and we'd bring them up to the office, and they'd lay them out and measure with the yardstick, and after about a couple of months of that, I'd written so much stuff that they figured it would be easier just to pay me a salary.
Oh.
And so that got me interested in writing sports, and I did join the football team. I played baseball, but football was too demanding to write at the same time that you were playing.
Well, you after high school, you went into the Navy, I believe.
Yes.
Anything special about the Navy that you recall?
Well, I served aboard the USS President Adams, which...
That was a troop ship?
Yeah,
Oh.
an attack transport. And fortunately for me, the war was winding down. And when it ended, we were like almost a taxi service bringing Seabeams back from Okinawa and other personnel and Marines and everything else. And then when we got into San Francisco, we turn around and bring invasion troops, to stay in that particular country. So that was pretty interesting because it got me in and out of California ports for quite a while, and got a chance to see the world.
Did you do any sports writing for the Navy?
No, since I completely know, I was in charge of the ship's newspaper,
Oh, okay.
which was, not a big deal.
So you're in the publishing business there.
Yeah, that wasn't that big a deal. but we, would take wire reports and put them in the newspaper, and then give them to the ship's crew and to the military personnel that we were carrying to the next port.
Well, when you got out of the Navy, did you get a job or did you go to school? Or?
Yeah, when I got discharged from the Navy, at that time they were recruiting at many big companies, and the Armstrong World Industries was headquartered in Lancaster, PA, and they came to Indiana and interviewed several people, and I presume some other schools too, and they offered me a job, and that was the highest paying job for any student in journalism, and so I was flattered to be offered it, and went to work for them. But
went to work?
Yeah, for Armstrong, and after about a year and a half of that, I got several promotions, and I still longed for the idea of being a newspaper guy, and not to be involved in publishing and putting on shows and stuff like that. So I made a decision that if I stayed there, I'd have a career at Armstrong, which would have been pretty rewarding, but I wanted to work on a newspaper, so at vacation time I had written to all the newspapers, daily newspapers from basically from New Jersey to South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and arranged for interviews, and I was offered a job by the Winston-Salem Journal.
Now, this is, you went to college. Did you go to college immediately after the Navy, and then you got the job with Armstrong?
Yeah, when I graduated.
So you went to the college. You went to Indiana University.
Yeah.
Okay, and at Indiana University, did you do anything special there? You got the Ernie Powell Scholarship, right?
Yeah, and worked on the newspaper that we had,
and you were voted the outstanding journalism graduate.
Yeah, they had a trophy.
Is that your first trophy?
I'd have to think I probably got one for playing baseball somewhere along the line.
But so now you've gone to Winston-Salem.
Yeah, and worked in sports there, and enjoyed it, and then went to Richmond.
Why did you go to Winston-Salem? That's a long ways from New York.
Yeah, but they see I was going on vacation,
yeah.
and I drove, and every paper that responded to my card, I'd stop for an interview, and they offered me a job at that time, and so that's what I wanted to do, even though it was I wasn't making as much money on the newspaper as I would have at Armstrong, because at that time I was in their executive training division.
Oh.
And so I knew the pay was going to be too good at Armstrong to pass up later on.
In Winston-Salem, that's not close to any big sports venue at that time.
No, but I dreamed of covering North Carolina and NC State and Wake Forest and Duke.
Oh, okay. The college sports.
Yeah, and wound up to start not covering any of those teams, but covering Lenore, Ryan, and Elon, and Appalachia.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Which is a little bit of a letdown for me, but I enjoyed it and used that as a stepping stone, and then an opening came in Richmond, and I moved up from Winston-Salem to Richmond, worked at the Times-Dispatch.
Yeah. So you lived all your early years up in Connecticut, and now you've moved down to Winston-Salem. So
Yeah.
you learned to like grits and stuff like that?
No, I never did. In fact, I wound up marrying a gal from North Carolina that I met in Washington.
Ah.
And she was a grits person, and I never adapted to that.
And as a matter of fact, we have a picture of you and her here, don't we?
Yeah, back in the old days.
All right. Well, we haven't met her yet, though. So you went to Richmond,
Yeah,
and there you're closer to the Washington sports arena.
yeah, and
others.
I began covering the Redskins when I went to Richmond. Back in those days, the Redskins would be at home, and the Colts would be on the road with the Baltimore Colts. And then when Baltimore was at home, the Redskins would be on the road, and I was the main writer for the Colts, and then when the Redskins were home, I did a secondary story on the Redskins. We had a regular beat writer. Eventually, I got that job, and then spent all my remaining years on the newspapers with the Washington Star.
So you went to the Washington Star about 1961, somewhere.
Probably before that, probably in '59.
Oh.
Because I remember
And it was
covering,
known as the Washington Evening Star, right?
yeah, back in those days, yeah. And it was the biggest paper in Washington at the time.
Was it bigger than the Post?
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh.
And but the Post was a morning paper, and when television came, people got the morning paper, and the afternoon circulation dropped dramatically because people getting through the workday, instead of reading the paper at home, turned down the television set.
Yeah. Well, you didn't get married until after you came to Washington. So, how did you meet your wife?
Well, when I came up to Washington, I stayed at a friend's house who was on television here in Washington, and he arranged a blind date for me, and so the four of us, he and his date, and me and my companion at the time, went to several events, and that started a flaming relationship, even though it took me 3 years to wind up getting married.
I assume she worked here too then.
Yeah, she worked on Capitol Hill,
Oh.
and she was personal secretary to two congressmen from Michigan, oddly enough. And
Yeah, because she's from North Carolina.
Yeah.
And she's second to Congressman from Michigan.
Yeah, but it's strange how things work out. And when she retired, I thought it'd be interesting to go to Michigan, to her district, or her congressman's district, and meet the people that she had been on the phone with for all these years and probably never saw. So that got me interested in traveling, and we went throughout Michigan and had a great time. At that time, I thought Michigan, it's Detroit and the rest of the state, and but we found out that it was a really, really interesting state to go to the sand dunes and Mackinac Island, and
The Sleeping Bear Sand Dunes.
yeah, and the automobile factories, Pontiac, and so that was a great trip. And then we began picking states at random to travel, and when we had vacation, then we went abroad, and so I've been traveling on vacation, ever since that.
Well, let's get back to sports, because as a sports writer for the Evening Star, you must have covered a lot of different sports.
Yeah. I was fortunate to do that everywhere from the Super Bowl to, tennis championships at Forest Hills and boxing matches and soccer matches and heavyweight fights and all that, whatever came up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I would assume that you got to know some of these sports stars, writing and asking them, interviewing them and so forth, did you?
Yeah, well, that was part of the job. And
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, I've saved a lot of the tapes that I used to make sure I was accurate. And I just looked at one of the tapes the other day, and it was with George Halas, the founder of the Chicago Bears, and
George
Halas,
Yeah.
Halas, and he was the founder of the Chicago Bears and one of the guys that started the National Football League. So and then of course had quite a few tapes with Vince Lombardi when he came to Washington. That was about the time I covered the Redskins on a daily basis. And the first Redskin game I covered was back in 1959 when I was still at Richmond. Mm-hmm. And then I've had a sort of a relationship, either covering them or working for them or working in the press box for 55 years until last year when I had more trouble than normal in recognizing numbers. And 66 looked like 88 to me. And
I understand.
So, I particularly the fat guys, because
Yeah.
was dislodged.
Well, when I grew up in Southwest Virginia, the sport that I was interested in was baseball, and the team that we heard about was the Washington Senators.
Mm-hmm.
So you must have gotten to know a lot of the Washington Senators.
Yeah, although they faded, they were transferred to Minnesota and Texas.
Yeah. But they didn't transfer until when?
In the early 60s.
Was it early 60s?
Yeah.
That long ago, huh?
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
Because I came with the Washington Star in 1961.
Yeah.
And there was still baseball there. I didn't cover that much baseball, but we had a regular baseball writer, and when he went on vacation or his daughter got married or something like that, then I was the baseball writer till he got back. And
Well, do you have any favorite sports team?
Indiana University.
Oh, we haven't even talked about that. Why Indiana University? What team?
Well, they're called the Hoosiers.
Yeah.
And they wound up beating Maryland just this last Saturday. So
Okay.
they.
I think I noticed that score.
Yeah, they don't. They back then they were a basketball school, a lot like Duke, known for basketball, but put out a football team, and the Hoosiers haven't had good seasons. Basically never,
Yeah.
They went to the Rose Bowl back in the 40s or something. But I covered a lot of basketball with them, and the year they won the national championship, and still remain the last of the teams ever to go through the whole basketball season without a defeat. And
That's a big accomplishment.
and yeah, that was back in 1976. Indiana did that, and what made it particularly intriguing for me was that that was the year I was elected to the United States Basketball Association Hall of Fame.
Oh, okay.
And so having that honor and having your team go undefeated what made it a nice
big deal.
parlay, yeah. So I enjoy that.
So I couldn't get you to say the Washington Senators or the Redskins. It's the Indiana University basketball team.
Yeah.
What about a sports star? Any sports star that stands out?
Yeah, by far. That would be Rocky Marciano, who
Well,
was,
he's a boxer.
yeah, well, the thing that made him so intriguing to me was that I had taken a vacation. I was still in Winston-Salem at that time, and I talked the boss into allowing me to spend an extra couple of days up in Connecticut if I could write some stories from New York. And he said, that's a deal. So Rocky Marciano was preparing for a heavyweight title fight against Harry Kid Matthews. And I thought it'd be interesting to interview Rocky because he had tried out for the baseball team at Raleigh. He was a catcher, wanted to play pro ball. And so anyway, I went up to Grossinger's, which was the training headquarters for Marciano and a lot of fighters, and met his manager, Harry Goldman, and asked if I could talk to Rocky. And Harry said, we give the guy 1 day off a week when he's preparing for the fight, and he's up there in whatever the town was with the Tomato King. And he said, why don't you come back tomorrow? And I said, I can't, I'm due back at the newspaper. So he said, I'd like to help you, kid, but, well, let me see what I can do. So he came back about 10 minutes later and said, Rocky Marciano has agreed to meet you at the intersection of Highway 22 and 94 or whatever it was. You'd drive halfway and he'd drive halfway. So I said, yeah, that's great. And so we met at the intersection of those highways and sat on the grass for about 45 minutes. And I got, 2 stories. Rocky,
so he was he showed that he was a real person.
Boy, to me, and
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali, and whom I met and covered some fights, always, said, I am the greatest, but Marciano ended his fighting career as undefeated. Yeah. And not too many guys do that, and tragically he got killed in a plane crash.
Yeah. Well, we're down to about 4 minutes. Can you believe it? And
we got 44 years to go.
well, is there any special sporting event that stands out in your memory?
Well, yeah, the championship game with Indiana playing Michigan for the NCAA title, and they had Gerald Ford was the president at the time, and he was a Michigan guy, and if Indiana beat Michigan, he was supposed to invite us to the White House, and I think that's the way that tradition got started. Back in those days, if you were a national team like the Davis Cup tennis team, then you could meet the president at the White House. But nowadays, almost any championship team.
Okay, after the Star closed, you became the Director of Information for the President's Council on Physical Fitness. How'd you get that job?
Well, George Allen had been the Redskin coach.
Oh.
And he no longer coached the Redskins, and he became chairman under President Reagan, whom was a friend of his on the West Coast.
He brought you along then.
And when I was out of a job, he offered me a job with the President's Council, and I was pretty fortunate there, because I Arnold Schwarzenegger became the chairperson of the President's Council shortly thereafter, and Arnold and I went to on a 50-state tour to promote youth fitness, and that was pretty nice to fly in Arnold's private plane and
I'll bet.
and meet the governors of all the states and everything else.
Well, we're down to 2 minutes, and you received many awards. Which award is probably the most important to you?
Well, I guess getting into the United States Basketball Writers Hall of Fame,
Virginia Sports Hall of Fame.
and then I've been elected to Virginia Sports Hall of Fame, and I am on the high school in Norwalk, Connecticut Wall of Honor.
Yeah.
So those three things, I guess, would stand
Now,
out.
you sponsor 4 scholarships,
Yeah.
and then 3 to students going to Indiana University, and 1 to a Green Spring employee that wants to major in journalism. Is that?
Yeah, he doesn't have to be an
Not
employee.
an employee, a Green Spring.
It's connected with, as part of what I wanted to do was to help him financially and also give him some background. So as part of the deal, if you get the scholarship, you intern here at Channel 6 for a number of hours during your year. And so that gives them a background, both financially and knowledge-wise.
Well, I remember the intern we had here this past summer, and she was a great delight.
Yeah.
Now, Steve also has a sports program here, and matter of fact, last week we had Steve and Carl Sell talking about the Redskins and the Nationals and so forth, and you want to make sure you listen to Steve's sports program next month. I think you do it every month, don't you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And his travel logs. He has his travel logs that he and his wife did. He took movies of those visits or trips, and so you will enjoy those too. And I'm afraid we have to wind up our talk, Steve, because we're out of time.
That's good
I knew
enough
this
for
would happen to us.
Good enough reason.
It always does.